love that music. It is my chance to set out another view, and today I want to talk about fossil fuels. And I want you to imagine, just shut your eyes for a moment and think of a big glass vase, maybe a flower vase of something, and think of going and buying a whole load of Smarties. You've got to buy a lot of them, please, folks. 800 Smarties I want you to have, and I want you to put all those Smarties into your nice glass flower vase. You've got 800 in there, and then I want you to take out one Smartie and cut it in half. Be careful, okay? Now, that one Smartie, that half of one Smartie, that represents the amount of coal that we in the UK used last year relative to the 800 Smarties being all the coal used across the world last year. Yes, we represent half of one Smartie of 800. Last year was a record ever year for coal consumption around the world. 8 billion tonnes compared to the UK importing and using just 5 million tonnes. And coal prices are at record highs. They're 5 times the 10-year average. Just think about that. Absolutely extraordinary. I mean, our use of coal is infinitesimally small. It's irrelevant. The use of coal in China, India, Indonesia is exploding. Developing nations, they want cheap energy, cheap food, and they're using fossil fuels, and their demand is increasing. And if you think that their leaders are going to create expensive energy and risk riots from their own people, frankly, you need your head looking at. And those countries, they are the biggest producers and the biggest consumers. The fourth biggest producer and consumer is the United States of America under Joe Biden, and fifth is Australia. Those are the numbers, and consumption's rising at some 4% a year. By 2025-26, the use of coal around the world will be 9 billion tonnes, and the demand amongst the poorest in Asia will be insatiable, absolutely insatiable, as they want cheap energy, cheap food, which has helped them lead longer and longer lives. The UK's use, it's like the pimple on an unattractive elephant's backside in terms of the global use of coal. Utterly irrelevant. And what it means is, because of this increase, our current about 1% of global emissions will continue to reduce as other global emissions soar around the world. And all we will do is that we will make ourselves ever more uncompetitive as we head towards getting rid of fossil fuels use for power in the UK. We are creating ever more fuel poverty. Now, you may say that's a good thing, but the point is it's utterly irrelevant on a global scale. So yes, the wealthy metropolitan elite might want to virtue signal. They might feel better for it. But let's be absolutely clear. We're making ourselves uncompetitive, poorer and colder. We currently import these 5 million tonnes of coal that we use, for example, in our blast furnaces for our steel making. That's well over 3 billion quid's worth of coal. It creates much more CO2 importing it from elsewhere than if we dug up our own coal treasure under our feet. Imagine keeping that 3.5 billion quid a year here in the UK. So we decided not to use our coal treasure under our feet, but instead send our jobs and money overseas. We've now got British Steel, owned by the Chinese. Great, thanks for that. They're asking for a £300 million subsidy to keep steel making here in the UK. So the truth is that our taxes will remain ever higher. Our energy costs, unlike what Westminster politicians say, will remain ever higher. Quite extraordinary. And then let's just look at gas, shall we? Well, yes, the good news is that international gas prices have fallen 70% since the highs back in August, but they're still 3 times the 25-year average. But let's just drift over to the United States and see what their gas prices are domestically in the US. Well, they're sitting nicely at their 25-year average. US gas prices in the US are 6 times cheaper than the UK. What gas are they using? Shale gas. What gas are we now buying thanks to Rishi Sunak's deal with the US? US shale gas. What treasure have we got under our feet worth trillions of pounds? Shale gas that we've decided not, or our politicians have decided not to use. This is the proof that our incompetent politicians are impoverishing our nation, sending our jobs and money overseas while we've got trillions of pounds under our feet. And instead, what have we got? The leader of the opposition going to Davos, glad-handing with the global elite, preferring that to Westminster. And he tells them, first of all, he wants to stop all new licences for exploration of oil and gas in UK territory in the North Sea. So that means, whilst we transition to other possible fuels, depending on technology over the next 30 or 40 years, we're going to have to import more and more over the next 30 years, despite the fact that we've got it here in the UK. It's one of the definitions, frankly, of utter madness. Absolutely extraordinary. Meanwhile, as Westminster pursues its net zero dream, actually what we're discovering is that around the world, the increase in demand for critical earth materials, minerals, is going to rise 7, 8 times over the next 20 or 30 years. And these materials we're discovering are being mined in terrible conditions, sometimes by children, people on the lowest of low wages, sometimes creating an environmental catastrophe far greater than the climate impacts these people are worried about. Just think of that madness. An environmental catastrophe greater than their concerns about global warming. More of that later, but we are truly in the thrall, in my view, of politicians that have no idea about the real impact of what they are doing with fossil fuels. Now, fine, let's invest in new technology, but let's not cut our nose off to spite our face. Let's not make ourselves poorer, colder, and hungrier in the interim. Because if we used our own energy treasure, we would be so much wealthier. It's unbelievable. We could pay off all our national debt. We would be wealthier. We could have better funded public services. We could help make this country great again. That is what I want you to think about this Sunday morning. And with that, here endeth my Sunday sermon.